Good afternoon, everybody. It is 1 p.m. on the dot, Monday, September 17th, 2018, and we are back for a look at the crypto markets from Decrypt markets. We're going to decrypt these crypto markets. Let's take a little look at what we've got going on here because there's quite a bit of kerfluffle in regards to the price action. So, if we just look at the daily, let's just get rid of everything and just see what a daily looks like. Actually, let's see it on Bitcoin. See a pretty, kind of a dull, really not a lot going on between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sunday had a big dip down to 63.23. That was promptly bought back up, and we are where we're at today. Actually, see pretty good volume coming in. It's a weekday, of course. We should see that volume come in. Strong support, buying off of the 6,200 level, and we're trading right around 6,300. We'll see if we stay there or not. So a little bit of a pullback down here. Now, is this going to be another drop? Are we going to experience a further slide down? I mean, if we look at this, if we look at the chart itself, we see that there was already a head and shoulders pattern that got rejected since, from the 9th and onward. But then what we see right here is another head and shoulders that has formed. So we could really be within the entire right shoulder of a broad, why not just draw it out? How's that? Might look better. Except that's my point and figure chart. Don't want that. Point and figure, by the way. Oh, I love point and figure. It's old school, but it's really clear profit targets, really clear everything. Let me see here. Okay. We want Bitcoin. Here we are. All right. So on the daily. So very easy. Obviously, something we can see is this pattern. Everybody and their dog saw this. This was what we had going on prior to the drops in September. Okay, we had this kind of activity here. But then instead what we ended up with was we got all the way to the beginning of September, and then we formed that. And ultimately we need to have a pretty strong slant down in order for it to break that neckline and then continue. But what else have we done? We formed an actual, inside that larger right shoulder is another head and shoulder with another deep slant here. So there's a couple bearish patterns that have shown up. Now, download master commodities PDF from W. Gann. I'm trying to catch up on all your videos. Really some stuff I know it'll take years. Yeah, and I'll tell you, brother Tim, Gann is a lifelong study in. Yeah, it just is. I mean, Gann takes a long time to learn, and it takes years of study, and then I don't know. Whenever you read stuff from So some like the best technical analysts, who are authors for the Chartered Market Technicians Association, who are phenomenal analysts themselves, they have not even written books on Gann because they just two reasons. One, because studying Gann is almost like a solo journey. It's like learning a fine art. It's kind of like something that you just kind of, it's like sculpting or painting or music. You can learn the basics and you can learn the fundamentals, but ultimately the actual application and practice, it's a lifelong study. So yeah, that's just how it is. And you'll find, you know, some of his work is more appropriate in some charts than others. So yeah. Looking at the daily chart here, though, we certainly have these head and shoulders formations popping up. The fact that we had a rejection off of a larger one still remains bullish. And then we have this little one here. We'll see if we actually do trade down lower or if this is just a little bit of a pullback here. We'll have to take a look. I'm looking at last night, I think. Yesterday I did a little bit of an Elliott analysis on Bitcoin and looking at the current wave, if we're considering the bottom of the yearly low, the calendar year low, to be down here, then we have a pretty good, if this is the second wave, if this is our first corrective wave, and then we had an ABC drive to get there, then we should be looking at the next impulse wave, the third leg, which is usually the most expansive. There's a couple dates that are projected for this. So the price levels are pretty much the same. The target price levels are very close together. The first one being 37,708, the other one being 34,761. As far as the dates, though, those vary quite a bit. So if we're looking at the closest date in our Elliott forecast, that would be December 1st of 2018. Or if we have to prolong it out, that would be in July of 2020. So there is a variance in the dates. On this chart, this is all the way over to 2020 instead of this current year. So that is the kind of projection that we're looking at in moving forward. There is a case for, I mean, it should have happened already. We should have seen, well, I guess we could. This could be we could continue a corrective wave down farther. There's just not a lot of range in time to suggest that would be the case. So just looking at that moving forward. And then we have ultimately our fourth and fifth. This is just the setup that I saw in price and time looking at this moving forward. So as far as the rest of it, looking here, also posted this idea on Friday. So there's a whole slapstick combobulation of crap heading. I don't think it's crap for cryptos. I think it's crap for regular markets. So this is the dollar index. And actually, don't even need that there. I just need to pull up the dollar index. That was on the square of 192, I believe. DXY. There we go. Yeah, so the dollar index. Dollar index is a basket of currencies weighted against the dollar. So you got the euro, the yen, the pound, Canadian dollar, the Swedish krona, and I think that's about it for now. So that's what we've got going on there. So right up here, and it's important to see how cycles relate to other markets. So the dollar index, of course, is a very, very, very important market to look at. It kind of sets the tone for how you trade Forex if you trade dollar pairs. This kind of sets the tone for how you trade a lot of those pairs. And so the dollar index is like a necessity in Forex trading to kind of see how is the dollar performing against all these other ones. So this is a really ugly looking chart for the dollar. But we're up against a square of price and time here in the dollar. And then this thick angle here, that dark column, that's a whole lot of crap. So September 23rd, that's coming up. September 23rd is the start of the fall equinox. That is also when Gann's square of 9. Where'd you go? Right here. Gann's square of 9 starts over on September 23rd. Okay, so we start, you know, it's a full 360-degree rotation ends, and then we start a new rotation in time. And so that starts on September 23rd. So the fact that we are within the yearly lows at the start of this, getting into September 23rd, is leading towards the being back into equilibrium, at least in time. We are not in price, I don't believe. No, we are not. That would be, excuse me. Ooh. Nope, not quite. So September 23rd, very, very important date. We also have on, coming up closer here, is there's a full moon on the 24th. Fall equinox starts the 23rd. There's a full moon the next day. There's a asteroid. It's an important asteroid in financial astrology, Chiron. When the moon and Chiron are conjunct, that doesn't happen often. The last conjunctions were I know this. Last conjunctions were on October 5th, 1922, October 13th of 1924, September 25th of 1969, and October 4th of 1971. Those all had a crap ton of volatility and some very yucky, fast moves in equity markets. And so the next one is here. That's showing up on the 20... Where are we at? 24th. Also the 24th, yep. When it does, it's often a pretty yucky market. Fear, rejection, and abandonment are the are like the qualities of that's the behavior that happens in the market as far as the participants. If we correlate what happened the last time Chiron and the moon formed a conjunction, we look back and at other times that has happened, and there is a strong correlation to markets falling, to sentiment being negative, to people abandoning their positions, and rejections of higher prices in equity markets. When this happens in other markets, when they're at their lows, it causes the inverse action. Okay? So Mercury goes into Libra on the 21st, and then it exits on the 24th. That's a big deal. And then Vesta exits Capricorn. So there's a whole slew of financial astrological things that happen right around here, which is also coinciding with a pivot in time against the dollar. So this is kind of warning us that there could be a negative, big negative against the dollar or currencies in general. Now, right here's an ugly one. So this is when Venus goes retrograde. And if there's one kind of piece of financial astrology that a lot of traders and investors seem to agree on, it's that for whatever reason, when Venus goes retrograde, you keep your ass out of the market. It is usually a very yucky time, because if the, and this is like in the U.S. stock market is the only real study I've done on it, but if it's not at a swing low when you get the retrograde cycle of Venus, prices pretty much drop. We could look at I did this with the Forex Lens folks this morning, but so this is the S&P 500, and we're getting up to this retrograde cycle. Odds are, on when this starts, prices flush in the stock market. If we go back in time, we look at the Venus retrograde cycle. So this was in March of this year, in 2017. We see prices fell. Where was the next one? Well, that's pretty ugly. Yeah, prices kind of dropped a bit there. Prices dropped here. Prices were fairly neutral from the open of the retro to the close. A little high, yeah, a little higher here. When it's at a swing low, here's a good example. This is a pretty steep rise. So there you go. That goes all. That's the last 10 years. So Venus doesn't show up that often, but when it does, this retrograde cycle causes a pretty ugly moves in equities and in cryptocurrency. So that's something to pay attention to. And this goes from October 4th, or sorry, October 5th through November 24th, I believe. 16th, sorry. And which is just it's 10 days after the exact mid of this cycle. So there's a lot of stuff coming up here. And additionally, speaking of that, if you remember when we were going over, I went through this thing like about the planet angles. Oh, I need a new chart. Talked about Bitcoin's chart and how the single angle, longitudinal angle of Venus, for whatever reason, it's a stupidly accurate swing indicator. I still can't believe this, but Astro. That's looking for Venus, and we looked at 36 and 72 degrees. So every 36 degrees, this is the chart for Bitcoin. I have never seen a chart that has such a near exact swing relationship from a piece of astronomical phenomena. So every 36 degrees, there is a really, really high chance that you are near some type of swing low or swing high. Okay? We're at like a minor swing high here, really at nothing on the last one, but we're coming up to the one tomorrow. Tomorrow, we get to 6 degrees. Sorry, not 6 degrees. 216, Venus at 216 degrees. And the thing is if we look at those angles individually, so if we look just at the 216, I want you to look here. This is a 10-year cycle we've got going on here. The last time these series of angles popped up all at once, and again, why are these angles showing up again? Because Venus is retrograde. So when a planet is retrograde, it looks like it's either moving backwards or sitting still, and that just has to do with how its orbit around the sun and ours, because they don't move. We all don't move at the. Not every planet. They don't move at the same rate, and they don't rotate the same. So it's a funky. For a little while, you get like a funky kind of optical illusion. It's kind of like if you've ever been sitting in a parking lot and you're in park, but you have your foot on the brake and you're looking at your phone, and all of a sudden you see a vehicle moving, but it was actually just a car next to you, but you think it's you, so you hit the brake even though you're still foot on the brake. It's a little disorienting. That is exactly what, I guess not exact, but that is the best description I can give for what a retrograde cycle does. So the last time we had this 216 degree repetition in threes was 10 years ago. 8 years ago, rather. And this is at the earliest data that Bitcoin was traded, all the way back to July 17th of 2010. This is where we see it around the same dates that we are trading at right now. And from this point, from this low of this date on September 17th of 2010, Bitcoin rallied 776% higher from 0.06 cents to, right here, to this swing high here, to 50 cents. Okay, things like to move in cycles and repeat. And if we look at the 216-degree angle, it doesn't always point to a rising market, but it often does indicate a rising market after it appears. Excuse me. Okay. And that is what we have going on here. So the statistics are that we are going to form a swing low around here, and then that generates a cycle of higher moves. In fact, the entire time that I've been doing analysis on Bitcoin, ever since after February, there has been a series of constant, important 5-year or greater astrocycles that have shown up at swing lows and swing highs. And when they all kind of generate these frequent back-to-back appearances over a year period, they it's kind of like it's like fuel for a fire. It just exacerbates a certain type of momentum in the future. So that's what we're anticipating. And that's not like chicken bone stuff. That's just looking at historical behavior of markets when planets are in the same longitudinal position. That's all it is. You can call it coincidence if you want, but I mean, it's like we've got thousands of years of grain charts that have been traded all around the world, and we can correlate the movements of those charts to where Mars was and Jupiter was at that time. So it's not just a supposition. I mean, they're not just blind target ideas of what kind of swing we're at. This is a very methodical form of forecasting. All right. Saying all that, if that is a swing low zone that we're looking at between tomorrow and the 24th, how low would prices go? I don't know if they would go very low. Certainly there's a case for it, but I mean, if we take a look at the 4-hour chart, this arc has acted as a pretty strong support zone. This is exactly where price found support this morning, and that's where it's trading up above currently right now. It's struggling to get back above this flag here. This is the talked about this on Friday in the recording. Oh yeah, by the way, sorry I wasn't here Friday. I did do a quick recording, but we had a real quick meeting. It was with attorneys. Boo. Actually, the attorney's pretty cool. So we're looking at this like a bear flag. Now, this bear flag is a short-term bear flag, and if it, like, this is a key area we're sitting at right now, because if we pop it off to the hourly, you know, when you get a breakdown out of a flag pattern or a pennant, or you get a breakout of any channel, you often see it break down, and then it moves to retest. So this is the retest right here. If it doesn't want to crawl back into the lower band here, if it doesn't want to come back into this, then we could anticipate a move lower. You know, because a lot of people don't like to trade the initial breakouts of these kind of zones. They will trade the retest though if it fails to test higher, and if it breaks back down, then people enter. So if that happens, if this does not hold and we do trade below the last swing low prior to this test here, that would be the 62.55 zone, then we could anticipate a pretty strong move lower, maybe to test the yearly lows, but I mean, we are generating consistent higher lows. Ever since this drop down here, we've been making higher lows. So that is something to keep in mind. The volume all around, though, has not been sufficient enough to actually generate a massive drive lower. It's pretty kind of mundane. Fundamentally, what we have coming up is kind of a big deal. The options expiration for Bitcoin comes up on the 19th. So generally, Bitcoin option expirations, ever since they've been available, consequently, the all-time high in Bitcoin was when the CBOE's futures contracts began trading. But when expiration comes up, there's generally a lot of activity in the spot market as well. So that's what we're in. We're in the spot market. I'd be surprised if we saw a lot of movement up or down, from this range before the 20th. It'd be interesting to see what happens on the 19th. I mean, there's so much fundamental, astrological, and technical things that are happening that between now and the 30th. It's just nuts, because I mean the 30th is when we have the SEC come in, and they're going to review these denied Bitcoin ETFs. I know I've talked about that a little bit, but 4 out of the 5 commissioners are Trump appointees. One of them is really pissed that the SEC denied the Bitcoin ETFs, and the most recent appointee, he's a cryptocurrency or a friend of cryptocurrencies, I guess you want to call them. So, and the other two, they're anti-regulation, small government. I mean, it'd be weird if it wasn't passed. I could see him, saying kick the can down the road again to like next year, but it's be weird for him not to pass. So, looking at it right now, what do we do? How do we trade it? What are the opportunities? I think, again, all of these lows are fantastic. I mean, especially if we go back to Ethereum, take a peek here. Where Ethereum's at is great. Not really too concerned about it. The major support level here is the 180-138. I noticed that this 1x2 angle is acting as somewhat of a support zone for Ethereum at the moment. It's got kind of a steep drop here. We'll see if that's something that it can sustain lower, but it doesn't look like it is. Actually, the last hour, there was a bit of volume that stepped in to buy that up. Long wicks, though, shadows. Something to keep our eye on. So there is a case as we're getting closer to the 19th for those lower prices. Now, looking at the altcoin markets and what we've got going on there. Taking a look at Cardano. Cardano's still below its 0.8. So I like the accumulation down here, because these, when things, the longer they sit below the 0.8 harmonic, the more violent and corrective the move up is. So, I mean, we're talking, we've been down here for quite a few days now, and that just means the next rise out is going to be a pretty big move. A good example of that kind of behavior is in Nano's chart, except I think that's on the wrong chart. Well, I don't know where I put it. Oh, well. Actually, now it's got a pretty nice daily chart here. Okay. From the Ichimoku perspective, we've got the... Wait, why is it? Daily, 4 hour, and 1 hour. put Bollinger Bands on here because I wanted to see what prices we're going to do as the extended. Bollinger Bands are they're a volatility indicator. I sometimes put them on to see if there's a move like we saw this morning. I want to see if prices are, if this is like a fake out to the downside, which according to the hourly it is, because when you see a squeeze, so for instance right here we see that the Bollinger Bands on the bottom of the screen here, we see that prices have consolidated. We can see that the upper and lower bands, they are pretty close together. You know, where they were wider, they come in together, so that tells us that volatility has decreased. This is called a squeeze, a Bollinger Band squeeze. And so then what we see is this. We see prices trade higher, and they start to pierce the top of the upper band, and now they're holding above the upper band. Generally, when you see this happen, this is a bullish sign, because we can often see when that happens, we see a sustained move, and we see a sustained multiple incidences of prices trading above it or closing above the cloud, that the upper band, and that's a very bullish sign. And we can see that as it pulls back, there's a I don't know why TradingView has 20, but I believe John Bollinger set the base at 21, and the style, there's a simple moving average, 20-day moving average inside. So that is like your pullback area, but you know, I use the Ichimoku system, but I want to see the volatility here. So we can see that this is pretty common for prices to trade higher and follow the band as it trades. Like right here, we can see it moves down, it continues to have bearish activity. The fake out happens when you have that initial break. Like right here is a good example of a fake out. You have this a squeeze happen right here. You have the breakout happen, but then what happens? It fails to generate any higher momentum. In fact, all we get is selling pressure, and so that's a good example. And that is what has happened currently. As we're looking at the hourly chart, we see a pretty nice drive down over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, but there is no selling pressure as we got to the noon hour here. It actually came back into it. So this when this happens, there's a high probability of a violent snapback higher. You know, it's not very common that you see this revert back down again. If it is going to, it would trade sideways, but right now we're seeing kind of the opposite. Same on the 4-hour chart over here. And along with the 4-hour chart, there's a sign that, you know, we have a trend change coming, because the thickness of the cloud, David Linton in his book on the Ichimoku system, he said that thick clouds often appear at the beginning of they often signal the end of a trend, the start of a new one. So, you know, the first signal of that trend change in the Ichimoku is the thickness of the cloud at a top or a bottom of a trend. And then you see the Kumo twist, it's called, where we see a green cloud ahead, the span A is above span B, and it's arcing up, except I better plot those lines so you can see them. So we see lead 1, span A is still above span B, and where was I at? Oh yes, and we see a pretty nice kind of a bounce off of the historical lagging span, historic lagging span low. So there's a lot of bullish sentiment right here, but it is inching very close to some resistance of, you know, really below 63.60s, where we've got some initial resistance. We want to see it trade above. So we'll see if this actually holds as a sell zone, but you know, it's looking fairly bullish at the moment. Okay, let's bring it back over to some altcoins. So looking at Cardano, And we don't need the Bollingers on right now. Cardano. Daily chart still looking pretty ugly. Excuse me. It has yet to show like a daily close or a cross above the conversion line. The 4 hour is looking a little better for that bullish change in trend, because we've got this thick cloud here. We actually did get a cross of the conversion in the baseline, but we would need to see prices, trade up higher. Obviously it found rejection at the bottom of the cloud. That's very, very common. But we'll see if that continues the trend lower or not. And then on the hourly, we see it's a pretty flat distribution. The selling pressure down, it hasn't been sustained. We'll see what happens when it trades back up to the 67, or the 6.067 cents zone is where you would see a lot of price rejection lower. But these are really thin clouds, so these don't act as very strong resistance areas. It's pretty easy for prices to trade through these zones. Nano. Nano on the daily. Nano is still technically in a bull flag. Nano has not shown a return to the bearish side of things. Nano is facing resistance because the lagging span is pretty much following the lower band of the Ichimoku cloud here. If we look at the daily chart in the top left, yes, there is compilation. There is. That is right here. 216 degrees. That's what we're looking at. And we could consider this to be in a swing low value area. And a compilation, I was talking about this zone because the last time we had a series of 3 like this was 8 years ago today, all the way back here. And 8 years, that's a Venus is heavily associated with the Fibonacci levels. Venus is hugely associated with Fibonacci levels, and 8's part of a Fibonacci series. And so we've come back full circle into these date ranges and these angles. And the thing is that they tend to repeat themselves. Price action in planetary angles, that tends to repeat itself. Not the exact price action levels, but the exact kind of swings over the long term. You'd want to be looking at like a weekly or monthly chart to see, well, how would this pattern, play out in the future? And that's really hard to do with Bitcoin's chart, by the way, because there's a Tony Plummer's book, The Law of Vibration, The Revelations of William Delbert Gann. I really encourage you to pick up that book. It's a bit wordy and it's a bit out there even for me, but it's pretty interesting. Oh, where the heck are you? Gann's pattern of vibration. Okay, this is the pattern that is constant and consistent in every market. It shows up everywhere. You just have to figure out where it's at, where the market is at, that you would put this. And again, we're not looking for the exact same kind of... Oh, damn it, looks actually might be... No. We're not looking for things to be like, okay, well, here is a peak and then here is a higher high. We're just looking for the pattern to repeat, as far as there's a swing high that shows up here, a swing low here, a minor swing low here, followed by a significant swing high and so forth. But this is the pattern of vibration that is constant in every market. And it's easier to see like in treasuries or in the Dow Jones, S&P 500, the FTSE 100, the pound, things that have large amounts of historical data. It's hard to see with Bitcoin because you could take the monthly chart of the Dow Jones or treasuries and you could get it to go across the screen pretty easily. But if we do a monthly chart of Bitcoin, I mean, it's hard to say where we're at in that law of vibration. I mean, we could be this could be the pattern. Squelch it up a little bit. Or if we wanted to take it to the weekly. I mean, this could be that. Who knows? Leave it there and check. But that's the... Yeah, you are right. The 18th is the date. So looking again back at Nano on the daily chart, still looks like we have a pretty nice flag pattern happening here. 4 hours pretty evident too. The 1 hour showing a little bit of a bid back up here. Although we'll see if it needs to break back above the cloud here for us to be wanting to take a trade. Which is, I've actually got some buys. My stops got hit this morning. I was down on Nano, but I was up on the others. But there's a good on the 4 hour. Or on the daily. You know what? Let's come back to this one. XLM. This got me a little nervous on the last week, when we had this break of the neckline of this head and shoulder, but it's not showing follow through selling. That's really a sign of weakness. And I mean, when you have head and shoulders patterns form at the bottom of a trend like this, a non-inverse or a normal head and shoulders, they don't often trade like they would if it was formed up here. So you got to be aware of that. I mean, it's head and shoulders patterns only turn into head and shoulders patterns once the neckline is broken, and that's when you take the trade or you take it on a retest. But also, where does this form? They don't often form at the bottom. So on the daily, a sign of a trend change are these thick clouds that appear. So that's something to pay attention to. And then on the 4 hour, we've actually got like one of the easier to notice and identify signals on the 4 hour chart along with the hourly. So there's a trade that can be done once the lagging span, again, the lagging span's the trigger for which one is rotating now is the best opportunity. There's a series of them, and Cardano is one of them because it's sitting in a really big low. Cardano looks more like Nano did weeks ago. XLM, basic attention token, I think. Yes. Let me go down my list. But XLM, probably use the Bitcoin pair. Where are you at? Program with flying coins chart. This I guess I'm confused with what you're referring to. Compilation. I'm just trying to figure out the flying coin. Okay, XLM BTC. So yeah, XLM BTC. The trade idea is really, I mean, it has to be a break of these highs. You know, whether you use the Ichimoku. Still showing above the cloud here, very thin cloud. I mean, this is a choppy as hell trade. The Ichimoku does not do well in range markets because the market is ranging. But a break of these high, at least this high here, would be the entry for me. Actually, I believe that's where I have my limit orders set at 32, or just 3,200 is where they're at. And OMG was one, I believe. OMG was super lagging everything. But, well, it looks a lot different than it did this morning, so ignore that one. I promptly got out of all my Steam that I was holding because the Steam blockchain is experiencing some issues, like the site is down. Coinigy? Is that what you're talking about? Maybe this site. If that wasn't a if that wasn't a like a fund or an algo setup, I don't know what was. I mean, when it's like a perfect order book of stair stepping, I mean, I don't know what is. That was a little ridiculous. Populous. Yeah, Populous on the hourly was a chart I was looking at. I don't know if, I mean, it would have to, everything else would be like screaming, but Populous, I like the entry in Populous above all these clouds here. That would be at the 56.90 zone. Populous. Monero, I want to get back into Monero, but on the daily, we're gonna wait there. 4-hour chart looks a little, actually 4-hour chart's probably the better. We did XMR at 121.52. What's that? 123. Yeah, pretty close. Yep, 121.52. That would be the Monero trade. Dang it, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm going to feel like an idiot because I don't know what it is. My program with flying coin. Dang it. Somebody help me out. I'm going a little ADD here. ZRX. Let's see how it holds support here. But otherwise, no, not looking at that. Oh, Qtum was the other one. Qtum. Maybe. I want to look at... Oh, there's a little pressure there. Litecoin. Because Litecoin... Yes, that 56 value area just keeps oscillating around here, and it's like not moving or doing anything. It's just hanging around. I've actually 40. Oh, let me look on my other screen here. 47.30. Yep. Okay. I have resting buy orders at 47.30 around the arc here, because I expect if 50 were to drop, then I mean it might do a little bit of a flash crash down. I've got orders sitting down below, but 47.30 and then 48.70 are areas that I have resting limit orders. So I'd like to see a pullback down to there for that entry. Otherwise, we'd have to wait for a break above, but I don't see that happening there. And. Oh, the relative rotation graph. Ah. Okay. Here we go. So, yeah, I mean, basically what I was saying earlier is that ADA looks like where Nano was. That is exactly true, because ADA is way... And so is Ethereum, in fact. So, again, for the relative rotation graph, for those who have not seen this, it's separated into 4 quadrants, where we have the top right is the leading, the bottom right is the weakening, the bottom left is the lagging, and the top left is the improving. So, and so this is a price-weighted average. So it's all of these cryptocurrencies. They're kind of formed into their own ETF, and so this is how they're trading. How they're performing against the entire group. And so the closer something is to the center, the more correlated it is to the entire performance of all of these. And that means that they're not very good trading opportunities, because they won't provide a lot of activity. But the farther they are away from the center is where you're going to find the best trading opportunities. And it also depends where they're at. So things that are in the leading category means that they are like ahead of the pack. They are, if it's like a race, they are well ahead of everybody. They're just way out there, and nobody can catch up to them. And then when they transition into weakening, that means that they're still outperforming the market and their peers, but that the momentum has slowed down. So these are actually, you want to sell things that are in the leading category and transitioning to weakening. And then when things get into weakening, you just kind of just let them hang out there for a bit, because then when they get into lagging means that they've experienced sell-offs, they are trending down, they're performing poorly against the entire aggregate market here, and they actually end up being the buying opportunities you want. So when things are in the lagging category, these are the things I want to look to see to buy. And so when they start to point up, like Ethereum is, or ZEC, or Ripple, these are things that I pick up to buy. You know what? I wonder if EOS. I love Optima. This is like my favorite software, but God, they are behind the times when it comes to getting live crypto data. I mean, it's a pain in the butt. Let me see if I can add. Don't think we can add the others here. Oops. You know, if I can, I'll check tomorrow if I can. I think they added EOS. I don't remember. I'll look. But all right, so when things get into the improving, that's when they're probably starting to come out of an area of consolidation, or they're experiencing bouncing. This is where they start moving up higher. This is when they start to see an uptrend, or at least an accumulation phase. And so these are the ones that, these are also considered areas to look at for buying. So, you know, when I'm looking at what's happening here, I mean, Cardano is underperforming the entire market. So Cardano is a currency based solely on its position in the relative rotation chart graph, the RRG. This is one that I want to pick up because it's lagging so bad against its peers. Same with Ethereum. Bitcoin Cash, I just don't like it, so I don't ever fiddle with it. And then Zcash, maybe. But if we look at what's happening back here, we see that Monero is facing a lot of weakness. It's no longer leading the pack. It's no lie. You probably saw it pop up in crypto news how well Monero was performing. Same with Dash. And then, we see Neo coming off of those moves as well. Bitcoin Gold certainly showing some stellar performance. It's outperforming everybody. In fact, this was a trade idea we had last week and the week before on Bitcoin Gold being a pretty good stalwart trader in this market. So yeah, looking at all of these though, Cardano and Ethereum are certainly the ones that are the underperformers, and that look to be the ones that would have the most gain on your risk. So things that are way out here, the farther they are from the center and they're in the lagging area, means that these things are really oversold, and that these have the highest percentage of returns on for your risk than everything over here. So Cardano has a higher return on your risk than Zcash does. Same as, right now, Bitcoin Cash has a higher amount of return than NEM does. So, yeah. Anyways, there's a few trade ideas there. XLM, Populous, XMR, Litecoin. I think, gosh, there was another one I had. Wasn't Qtone, wasn't OMG. I think it might have been Lisk. What's the one? Let's see. Yes, it was. Lisk on the daily, I liked. All right, so Lisk, yeah, that's right. A break of this high on the 4-hour chart would mean that the lagging span is in the cloud, but we're above the high here. That would probably produce sufficient conditions to see the lagging span break above. And this is kind of like violating the my Ichimoku rules a little bit, but I just gotta look at how it has performed against everything else. This has got a structural breakout of a trend line that was tested here. So I like the Lisk trade at this area at the 58.80. All right. Any questions? All right. Anyways, I think we're gonna have a pretty good week. It's really gonna be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. I mean, actually, the whole week's gonna be really interesting to see what happens, because we've got the beginning of a lot of financial astrology cycles starting tomorrow. We have options expiration on the 19th. Then we have the 23rd around the corner, beginning of the fall equinox. It's a cycle start and end start rather. So lots of crazy stuff coming up. And the Ichimoku system itself, just looking at it on the daily, where's Bitcoin? There we go. It's in this like really standard looking reversal zone. I mean, this is really indicative of a trend change, the way that it's currently positioned and set up here. When we start to see the conditions flatten out after, you know, a pretty substantial move like this, this is telling us that we're nearing a, well, actually, you know, technically in time we're already in bull mode. Price has to adjust yet, but you know, looking forward here, we're seeing that the span A's turning up, span B is still flat, so there's a lot of bullish bias that remains, even though we've got this extended bearish condition still. So looking at those future moves and not looking, I mean, it's the entire market's down 80% and people are still screaming sell it. That's just it makes no sense to me. Why you would want to start shorting now is beyond me. Could we go all the way to zero? Yeah, but it's at a yearly low. It's at a calendar year low. It's below its year-over-year low. You know, this is just, you don't short markets like that. That's just not a good idea. Oh, when to buy now or tomorrow? I've got buys in already. I've got long positions I've been holding for, you know, a couple, 3-4 years. But, you know, if I was the capital that I'm actively swing trading right now, I have active positions in Bitcoin, Litecoin, OMG, Stellar, Basic Attention Token, I got rid of ZEC, picked up Monero at a high. I shouldn't have done that, but it looked like it was moving higher. But I'm perfectly comfortable picking up things around here. Actually added more Cardano because it gave a little bit more of a discount today. It may go below, it may break that 6 cent level. I mean, if it does, that's pretty awesome. I mean, I'm just looking at it here. It's a really weak performer. I mean, if we do break below the 6 cent area, I mean, things that are breaking and making new all-time lows, sometimes they get these crazy waterfall events. So I've got things sitting at like 3, 4, and 5 cents, just because it's not uncommon to see things do like this flash move where it just hits all these stops as low as they go, and then it just pops right back up. I mean, it happens in the blink of an eye. So, probably because people have buy orders down there, but I've got buy orders sitting all the way down there, and you know, if there is a move down again, we might get another wave down here, maybe to test that 6,000 level, but I mean, otherwise, the conservative entry on ADA is certainly, if you're looking at the hourly chart, that's up at the 71 value area. Or you can wait for it to pull back down lower. On the 4-hour chart, what do we got? On the 4-hour chart, you know, yeah, it's just like, it's really the same area, the 7100 value area from a conservative entry. That's where we'd want to be looking at. And then on the daily, if it crosses above, closes, if we get a daily close above the conversion line, then that's another entry signal as well. So we'll be looking to see how those play out. But yeah, interesting market. Very, very fun market. very long bear market. And oh, here's the fun part. I mean, this is like playing with gasoline near a big fire. It's these shorts. The short interest in here is huge. I mean, we're approaching a match of all-time highs with the shorts. All-time highs sitting back here. But, I mean, we've got a triple top on short positions. This is a cup and handle formation, but, I mean, eventually shorts like this start to eat each other because they start to cover, and shorts often initiate cover rallies off of themselves. It's like they cannibalize each other. Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of people hurt here. And, you know, sites like Bitfinex and BitMEX, they have predatory leverage. And it's not right. But, I mean, people who participate with that kind of leverage, I mean, I don't think there should be regulations stopping them. You risk what you want to risk. You're an adult. But I think you're a moron for trading this market with that much leverage. It's a little silly. But yeah, this short interest here is pretty interesting. It'll be interesting to see what the price of Bitcoin will do if we do get a breakout above here, which is not very far away. But I mean, we know what would happen if it gets rejected. So yeah, there's a definite probability of all-time highs being breached with the short side of things. But that's man, that's dangerous. Oof, would not do it. There's a certain degree of complacency that I know I'm over my time here, but there's a certain amount of complacency that people who have gotten into shorting, and this is where I think this, like, the cruel thing about this market right now is that there's so many new traders in cryptocurrencies. Like, this is the first market they've traded, and if it's been a bear market, they've probably, if they haven't already, they certainly are thinking about converting over to being a short when they shouldn't. And so this has got all the signs of a euphoric bull chart as far as the bearish participation, because they're going to see these elevated levels and you know, new traders buy at the highs. So I mean, really, and new traders short the lows, and that is exactly what you have happening here. And this is one of those fundamental and technical catalysts that generate massive whipsaws in a market. And that's when you get a whole bunch of new traders going short right when a lot of the existing shorts are probably going to cover. That's why I'm saying they're going to cannibalize themselves. And yeah, you'll get a pretty interesting move. Yeah, be kind of crazy to watch. Anyways, I hope you guys had a great weekend. Hope you guys are having a good week so far today. Forex Lens folks, I will see you tomorrow morning. The rest of you, I will see you tomorrow afternoon at the same time. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a nice comment or something. That'd be great. And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.